Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, someone I am always teeming with excitement to introduce. It's not just because he used to play for the New York Mets. It's not just because we share in the ability to playfully tease one Kristaps Porzingis. But he's just an awesome guy. You could hear him on 105.3 The Fan, of course, covering all of Dallas sports, including the Mavericks, which is who we're going to talk about today because the Knicks play him this week. My main man, Mike Bacsik. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, man, I'm doing good, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on. I'll check you out every once in a while on those Knicks post-game shows. I always feel like they are more entertaining. Unfortunately, you guys have been losing more than winning as last year, but they are pretty entertaining when you guys lose.
You know, it's funny. I don't think most Knicks fans would agree that they are more entertaining after the Knicks lose, but I'm glad you feel that way.
Well, as a person who I am rooting for the Knicks, I'm not like a huge Knicks fan, right? They don't affect my life at all. If they win or lose, like the Mavericks or Cowboys or Rangers or something, they don't affect me at all. I'm rooting for them from afar. But I find it fun as a observer of Knicks post game when they lose on how mad or how unhappy, I will say, that the fans can be after a game.
Well, you know what? That's actually a really great place to start because, again, I don't unfortunately get to pick the brains of former professional athletes a lot this season, since again, I know you have checked it out occasionally and we talk offline. You know that this has been a frustrating season for Knicks fans. But the way that I feel hearing people out, and obviously we all know Twitter, it's always opinions flying around on Twitter. You would think that the team is, I don't know, 10-30 or something to that effect, or 11-29 or something. You know, the Knicks are 2 games under 500. They've had some injuries. They've had some COVID stuff. They've had some nice wins. They've had plenty of terrible losses. Do you find that did you find, at least, you know, anywhere you played, but especially in New York, that expectations had a lot to do with how fans reacted to seasons that maybe did not go the way you wanted them to go?
Sure. Being with the Mets when I was in 2002 was my first year. They're coming off of being in the World Series in 2000. Obviously, you have 2001, which doesn't go the Mets' way. And you also have September 11th, which changed a lot of things. But in 2002 and 2003, my 2 years with the Mets, back and forth between there and AAA Norfolk, is the expectation was, if you're not only making the playoffs, being a playoff contender, but then looking like a World Series contender, because the expectations changed after 2000, then you guys suck, right? And it was tough for me. I'm coming from the Indians organization, which was a great organization, making the playoffs on a consistent basis in the late 90s, and get traded after 2001, and they'd made the playoffs and lost to Seattle in a 5-game series. I expected to be on a winner. It looked like a winning team, but you try to keep things in perspective as a player. It's tough.
Can you?
In New York, it's tough because of how many people are covering you. And now, look, I'm on a podcast right now. This is a great podcast. Thousands of New York Knicks fans follow this podcast for more content on their team. When I played, there was tons of papers and radio, but there wasn't even podcast yet. There wasn't Twitter yet. There wasn't Instagram yet. So now it's even times 3, times 5 when it was early 2000s on how many people are covering the teams, and especially in New York. And you try to keep perspective, but we hear, as a former player, and I know now, they all hear all this. They won't hear everything, but they hear the expectations. They hear the concerns, they hear it all, whether it's great, because last year it was unexpected. Everything was great. But from New York, right now, the New York Knicks, they finished I can't remember if they were 4 or 5. I know they're in the 4 or 5 now.
They got the 4 seed. It came down to the wire, but yeah.
Right, with Atlanta. And now the expectation is, same thing in Dallas. All right, you made the playoffs. I don't care anymore making the playoffs. That is the bar is there. What's the next level? The next level is showing me you can be a contender, like a real contender, not just make the playoffs. And that's where Knicks fans are. I totally get it because that's where we're at in Dallas. Making the playoffs, I don't give a crap anymore, Luka. You've made the playoffs. Can we win a playoff series? And when we get into this, it's looking better over the last 10 days for the Mavericks, but we've been in the same place of like right around 500. Who gives a crap? Around 500 is kind of like, it's fine, but it's not entertaining for us anymore.
So you just said the last 10 games, and they have been very good over the last 10 games. I was just playing around with some of the numbers before. So first, let's see what it was. So as of right now for the year, you guys are actually 10th in net rating. It's amazing because if you look back at, it was, let's see what this date was. On December 7th, you guys had a losing record, 11-12, one game under 500, negative 1.8 net rating, 23rd in the league at that time, above basically the tanking teams and the Blazers and the Kings, who are not teams that you want to be associated with. Since then, the third best team by net rating, trailing only the Grizzlies and the Cavs. Grizzlies have been playing as well as anybody in basketball for a while now. And then as you guys, and you're 11-6 in that span, you're putting it together. Luka's been there for some of those games. KP's been there for some of those games. Right. Has the play materially? Well, I actually want to take it a different route. Have you seen like a level of just like, is it execution? Is it more effort? Is it the coaching? Is it health? What do you attribute the turnaround to?
Not health. Everything else, yes. The COVID has been killing a lot of the NBA. It's been killing the Mavs. Right now, Jason Kidd isn't coaching. I mean, Luka's had it. Now Porzingis has it. Tim Hardaway Jr. had Reggie Bullock. Almost every player. At this point, I assume I believe Dwight Powell and Dorian Finney-Smith, if I'm correct, they're pretty much the only two players that haven't had it on the team. I expect in the next 10 days or so that they're both going to get it and be out too. So health hasn't been what has helped the Mavericks. But I will say this, to everything else, yes. Around that time, around December 7th, I don't know the exact game and I don't know the exact date. Jason Kidd called out this team, called out the Mavericks team as not being a team that was trying very hard on defense and giving the effort, said, well, this team isn't built for defense. Almost maybe a little bit of shot at maybe Mark Cuban or Nico Harris, general manager.
The new GM, yeah.
He hasn't been able to really do much. He was a late hire type of deal, but it's almost like, well, you didn't build this team for defense. These guys sulk when they don't make their shots and then they don't get back on defense. And as much as I love Luka and he's one of the best in the NBA, he's still immature. He's just 22. Sometimes he can get distracted in fighting the referees instead of playing the game of basketball and getting back on defense. Kidd called all these things out. He called out Luka specifically on arguing with the refs. He called out the team for not being a defensive team and trying on defense. And if your shot wasn't going in, then you guys gave up the other end and would allow easy transition buckets. And slowly but surely, this team is starting to play good team basketball. We don't play fast. The Mavs are a slow-paced team. Sometimes they can score a lot, but it's still a methodical offense. They're hitting shots now. They're moving the ball. Jalen Brunson has taken his game to another level, which has really helped.
We're going to talk about Jalen in a bit, yeah.
And the role players have been playing their roles now for about 2 weeks at a high level. The role players are doing what they need to do, hit their open shots, play solid defense, rebound well, because this isn't when you look specifically at the Mavericks, they don't have any good rebounders. Luka's the best rebounder
for his position. Yeah.
But their team rebounding, all of them are going after the ball. They're hustling. They're moving the ball. They're getting the open shot. So all of a sudden, Jason Kidd, who I have to give a lot of credit to, even though he's not coaching right now because of COVID, seems to have brought this team together and they're playing more of a team style, more of a defensive style. And it's all right now looking very good. It can change, but right now they're playing their best basketball by far.
Well, I mean, so I hear that, what you're saying, and I would love to be able to be like, well, that's great. That gives us hope here in New York, right? For a turnaround. Maybe it's Tim says something, maybe this or that and the other thing. And the sad reality is when you have a team that's, Luka Doncic is the sun and everybody orbits around him. And by the way, we said it briefly before we went on air, and I will have to acknowledge it. The other guy's been playing pretty well too, and he's talented. And then all the way on down, Brunson, Tim Hardaway Jr., all those guys. And
you refuse to say Porzingis?
If you're going to make me fine, I'll say Porzingis has been playing well. I will say it.
Yeah.
No, but you have the talent. And I wonder, looking at this Knicks team, because look, we know they are not as talented as the Mavs and a bunch of other teams. I don't know if I'm quite as hopeful for a turnaround. And it makes me think, again, I want to kind of lean on you as a professional athlete who has been through this. When it seems like it's an effort issue, or like guys are like the body language stuff is bad, is that just really just a byproduct of like, look, we're not playing well right now, so it's going to seem like we are not trying perhaps as hard as we can be? And yes, I am talking about a couple of players. Well, let's say one player in particular, Julius Randle, who's been getting a lot of the criticism here in New York. Or does it all kind of like, how do you get what I'm trying to get at here? Like where these things get jumbled?
100%. And I think one of the tough things in New York is to become a star in New York and stay a star in New York. I can speak to, I think I've talked about it before, like Roberto Alomar, who I got traded with from Cleveland. He wanted nothing to do with the New York scene. It's a different scene. And I think Randall enjoyed it at first, but now the expectation is you are a third team all NBA guy. You are considered a top
second team.
Oh, wow. Second team. Okay.
Second team. So, yeah.
I think it's too far to say he was a top 10 player in the game.
He wasn't. Yeah, no, he wasn't.
To get that recognition, and he has national commercials now, right? I've seen them that he has, and I can't remember what they are, but I remember going, damn, Julius Randle has hit it big. Like he's on a national spotlight now with, spots during NBA games and maybe even during NFL games. I've seen it, but he has maybe taken that fame and said, I did it. And that's always tough, right? The superstars, when we think of Jordan, Kobe, whoever, for maybe Patrick Ewing back in the day for New York, can you take that stardom? Can you take that fame of Georgetown and number 1 overall pick? And can you keep pushing yourself to say that's not enough? And that's why when we look at a guy like Michael Jordan during his Hall of Fame speech, and I was never obviously close to those guys, but I played with Mike Piazza. I played with guys that were very good players. Al Leiter, who I know is not a Hall of Famer, but great player, great
close.
Leader. Right. Is those guys would always look at somebody, something, some team and say, F that.
Julius did that this week.
Well, he did. And you know what? Maybe that'll get, maybe he'll get it going, because I think that I'm just going off of theory and thinking here.
That's all we can do.
Maybe he thought, I made it. I took New York from a nothing team to a number 4 seed. We almost made it. We almost won a playoff series. I'm now getting all these calls about, hey, you want to do this? You want to do that? You want to brand this? You want to brand that? And sometimes that can take you away from the ultimate goal of being the best basketball player you can possibly be. So I'm wondering if all of those great distractions, when I say great, because it puts more money in your pocket, more fame, maybe took him away from making his game a better game in 2021-22.
Yeah, and I just wonder, I think like all of New York right now who roots for this team is wondering, is a turnaround possible? Like, is there, was the, obviously, he exploded. Did he explode at the fans? Yeah, I would say he exploded at the fans. He was yelling pretty loudly on the court, and he had a chance to backtrack. And he didn't backtrack. That's the other thing. He did not backtrack after he had an opportunity to do so. I just wonder, is that the bottom? Like, how do you know when you've reached the bottom and like when it turns? Because here's the thing. You joke about it sometimes with me on Twitter. We've talked about it in the past. You wished you had Julius Randle last season, right? Because this guy was doing things that are just special. We know the talent is in there. Again, if you were sitting in my seat and you were trying to look for a turnaround, would you still have hope that there is something in store?
Well, I'll be honest.
Be honest, please.
Not if you keep the same team around, because as much as I like Julius Randle, he's from Dallas. He's not a number 1 player on a championship contending team, and he's a guy he can be a number 2, but you'd love for him to be a number 3, like a number 3, and you have a championship team. Like things have to go wrong for you to lose. Number 2, you're like, hey, I can do this because you think of Chris Middleton just won a championship as a number 2 player. And I would put him in a similar category. But when you look around the league and you look at some of the best teams, you go, okay, like he can be a number 2. You'd love for him to be a number 3 where you're making this discussion on, hey, is Julius Randle our number 2 or is Chris Middleton our number 2? It's like, man, we have an awesome team when we're having this discussion. And right now,
good problem.
Julius Randle is your number 1 and it's not in question. Nobody, to me, I like RJ Barrett. I don't love him, but I like him. He doesn't look like he can become a number 1, or at least to me, not yet. Quickly's a really nice young player. Obi Toppin's a really nice young player.
That guy's not here. Nobody's under any illusions that guy.
So that's why, no. Would I be hopeful that the Knicks can turn this around and become the number 6 seed in the East? Yeah, you can be hopeful there, but can you be hopeful that this team constructed can win a playoff series? To me, watching them play, and they beat Boston the other night when I was watching when RJ did the shot off. That was great. But you're not going to play Boston in the first round. You're going to have to play Chicago or Brooklyn or Milwaukee if you make it that far. And I don't think that team can beat one of those teams.
I think at this point for us, it's just about getting back to the brand of basketball that they played last year and figuring out who they are, which good transition back to the Mavs, because it feels like the Mavs are figuring out who they are supposed to be. And that does involve, obviously, Luka Doncic. It also involves a lot of former Knicks. So we just brought up KP. I guess we could talk about him for a second. He's been playing well, hasn't been able to stay on the court. Big surprise there. Right now it's with COVID, so we'll give him a pass there. In your heart of hearts, do you think, and I don't think they'll do anything before the deadline, but do you think they're more comfortable now with him being there as like, okay, we're going to roll with him as the number 2, or do you think this season the best thing that's happened is maybe, the old trade value gets pumped up a little bit and they still might have wandering eyes?
Both. I think Cuban is dead set on this working. I think Mark Cuban has married himself to, this is going to be my iteration of Dirk and Nash.
Okay.
And I think that I don't believe it. A lot of fans here don't believe it because Porzingis has played well this year. When he's been on the court, Jason Kidd has done a very nice job of using him more like a New York Knick. He does use the mid-post more. They do try to create mismatches where, hey, what we want to do is we want to set up a play where a 6'5" guy is going to be guarding you, and you can shoot over him. You can take advantage of this mismatch where a lot of times he was more of a catch and shoot guy with Carlisle. And we got to interview KP about a month ago before COVID hit the team and before it hit him. And he was playing well. And he talked about pretty much, I didn't want to be in Dallas anymore. He didn't go this extreme, but pretty much saying, I didn't want to be in Dallas anymore if I had to do what Rick Carlisle was asking me to do, because I was not being used to my best abilities. And I think Kidd has done a great job on trying to use him to his best abilities. And when you engage Porzingis on offense, like a lot of big men, when you engage him on offense, he is engaged on defense and he protects the rim and he gets his block shots. He's not a great rebounder for his size. He's an okay rebounder. He'll probably always be more of a 7 to 8 rebound guy. You'd love for him to be, when Dirk was in his prime, Dirk would average 10 rebounds, but in the playoffs, he'd get you 14 to 15 rebounds a game because he could just dominate the defensive glass. I don't think Porzingis has that in him.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Right. He's not Dirk. He'll never be Dirk. We just celebrated Dirk, but he can be a very good player. That being said, Jonathan, the reason us in Dallas would rather use him as a trade chip is because we don't believe he'll be healthy for a real playoff run. So if the Mavs, and he'll get hurt. This year it's been back, ankle, and knee, and COVID, and we're 40 games into a season.
That's this year's list. I know.
He's been good. We can't complain about his play on the court. We can only say, damn, every time we get rolling, something happens for a game or 4 games or 6 games, and then he comes back and it takes him a little bit of time to get into it. Then we're like, man, Porzingis, and then something happens.
Well, I'm not going to say I'm happy I'm seeing him that he's playing well. That would be disingenuous with me. But it's like, I will say this. There was a part of me that started to feel bad for him from afar because it was really not going well.
Yeah.
And at least look, this guy he was a 22-year-old all-star, so it's cool to see him at least doing what he's doing, even though if it kills me inside a little bit. You have some other former Knicks obviously on this team. It's like a running joke at this point. I'm trying to think let's talk about Reggie, because Reggie Bullock is a guy who you have, I think, been a little frustrated with at times this season. It seems like he's coming around a little bit. He's still shooting under 32% from deep, under 38% overall. Do you think the Mavs have buyer's remorse given him, basically 3 years at the full mid-level exception?
Mark Cuban's stubborn enough to say no.
Of course
I do. The Maverick fan does, but he has played well of late. After everything is with injuries and everything. I can't remember I think it was COVID with him. After he came off the COVID list, he's been playing better. He's been knocking down his wide open threes more. Like you said, Jonathan, when you came on our radio show, he does struggle. If you run him off the line and make him a ball handler and make him do something on the move, he stinks at it. He turns the ball over. He really can't finish at the rim if it's a contested. He can dunk. If you give him a dunk or you give him an uncontested layup, that's fine. But as long as you have a big man contesting and now he has to make a contested layup or he has to make a decision, he has to make a good pass off of a big guy waiting for him around the rim, he usually turns it over or makes a pass that nobody can really do anything with. Because, you always talk about on time, on target. He won't hit you in your kind of chest area. It'll be around the knees, or it'll be like you have to take 2 steps this way to go get the ball. And by the time that happens in the NBA, the defense has recovered. So breaking down the defense really didn't matter at that point. I just think that there's, to me, watching Reggie play, and he's played better, there's 100 Reggie Bullocks in this league. And they're easier to find than giving $10 million to. That's what we've seen here. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that come playoff time or come late in the year, I'm like, God, where would we be without Reggie Bullock? But right now.
Well, that was us last year.
Okay.
By the time we got to it was Julius and Derrick Rose. But I would say RJ Barrett stands are gonna kill me for this about when I say this about last year. I think Reggie Bullock was their third most important player last season because he was so reliable knocking down that open jumper and the chemistry with him and Randle. And I got to tell you, they miss him. I mean, there's no other way to say it because they went and got Fournier because Fournier could do more stuff on the ball, right? That stuff that Reggie can't do, Fournier can do. I don't know a Knicks fan right now that wouldn't want to make that swap, Fournier for Reggie Bullock.
I hear you because you guys have lost your toughness identity.
Yeah.
And he was part of that identity that you guys have lost. And they were trying to bring that here. And maybe it'll play out. Look, I know that we're halfway through the season. You can look at it like, my God, we're already halfway through the season. The Knicks are under 500 or Reggie Bullock sucks in Dallas. But there is time to change these things. And Reggie has a history of being a solid role player in the NBA. So for me to say he can't play in the NBA would be stupid because he's played in the NBA for a while and helped you guys out last year, has helped teams out before being a role player. But he hasn't played his best this year. Hopefully he can do better. He's actually taken time away from developing Josh Green, which hopefully you guys can see when he plays the Knicks. He, the 18th overall pick in the 2020 draft, he's in his second year, has really taken off these last.
Oh, that's nice. That's great because I know there was a lot of consternation, I guess, that he was picked ahead of what was it? Sadiq? Was it Sadiq Bey or maybe it was somebody?
Sadiq Bey was 19. Yeah, Tyrese Maxey, who's from Dallas, was like 23rd, and then Desmond Bane, who played at TCU in Fort Worth down the street, was picked 29th, and he's been great. And when Desmond Bane went off for 29 points against the Mavs in like late November, early December, a whole bunch of articles were written kind of like, hey, dumbasses, the dude who was playing 30 miles down the street is 100 times better than Josh Green. You guys screwed that one up bad. The next day, they started putting Josh Green in the rotation. So I think that show the media can have an effect on what happens on the court or on the field. It was like, I guarantee you, Mark Cuban would never admit it. Mark Cuban probably said, hey, you got to play this kid a little bit. And it's honestly helped his development, and he's starting to show signs of being a nice role player for this team.
Well, that's good. I'm looking forward to seeing how he looks. Somebody else that I'm, a soft spot here in my heart and for many Knicks fans, Frank Ntilikina. Am I going to get to see him? I don't know. Is he in the rotation? Is he out of the rotation? I've noticed some box scores. What's going on there with Frankie boy?
Unfortunately, COVID knocked him out of the rotation. He had a little bit of an injury too. Maybe by the time, who knows? But he's not playing anymore. Here's the deal. Luka's come back from COVID and he's taking up 34, 35 minutes at the guard position.
Sure.
Brunson has elevated his level. Today, we were having a discussion. He's a definite top 20 point guard in the league. Has he elevated himself to top 15 point guard in the league?
Jalen Brunson? It's funny. I was having the same conversation with myself because I talk to myself about this team often because I'm a Looney Tune about Derrick Rose earlier in the year when he was really, really getting after it. I think he was like third in the league in plus minus. I was like, is he top 15? Because there's like, I don't know if you've done this exercise because I have. There's like a top 12 that are top 10, 11, 12 that are like, no one's touching those guys. Right. And then there's another 10 or so where you could put some names in there. And if you told me right now that Jalen Brunson was in that group, oh boy, it's an interesting conversation. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I say top 20. My co-host,
I think that's more fair. Yeah.
My co-host Kevin was like maybe even to top 15, and I couldn't do that there. I thought somewhere right around 20 because I had him like going into the season around 25 to 32. Like,
sure,
one of the best backup point guards in the NBA and can start for a few teams. But now with Luka and Brunson starting together, that's also been a change that has really helped out getting Hardaway Jr. off of the starting lineup because he's a streak shooter. And when he's hot, and he's a horrible defender. And Luka doesn't really care. Luka's not a bad defender. He just doesn't care to play defense a lot. He's kind of that James Harden mentality of like, I can play it. I just don't feel like doing it, It's like,
when you're Luka Doncic, you could get away with that. So,
yeah. And when, the other night he went 22, 14, and 14, and he shot the ball horrible and still had 22, 14, and 14 because he's just freaking amazing at times. But Brunson has elevated his game, and that'll be something you guys will see. I'm pretty sure that Brunson will have a good game. Like Josh Green, who I just brought up, look, it's a few games. We're hoping. But he's a guy, Brunson, who is he's a free agent.
I was about to say, is there concern in Dallas? Because he's unrestricted. He can go anywhere he wants.
Yes.
There is concern.
That being said, we're really hoping Cuban will say, I can't lose this guy. There's just no way. You don't have the assets to lose him and not get something for. We're not opposed to signing and trading him. Like I brought it up today.
Okay. Interesting.
Is he a top 15 point guard in the league? And I said, well, I don't want to elevate him to like he's a number 3 on a championship team. I don't want to elevate him to that status yet. Because then I threw it back to him. I said, here's my question. Julius Randle, thumbs down. New York fans are pissed off. Would you trade Jalen Brunson right now in a sign and trade? Let's say it was the offseason, so financially it would work. Would you trade Jalen Brunson for Julius Randle? Because he's probably going to trend towards close to $20 million a year in the free agent market. And he said we would trade Brunson for Julius Randle.
So Fred VanVleet's going to make the All-Star team. So I want to Jalen Brunson. I'm not putting him. All due respect to Jalen Brunson, I'm not putting him there yet.
Oh, he won't make the All-Star team. No.
Even if he got the usage, because Fred VanVleet, the nice thing about Fred VanVleet is now that Kyle Lowry's gone, he gets the whole. It's his show. Okay. So if you gave Jalen Brunson that opportunity, I don't know that I could say he would do what. I mean, you would know better than me, but I don't know that I could say he's doing what Freddie's doing. But man, I'd sure wonder, right, to see him.
When Luka was out with his ankle injury and COVID,
I saw some of those box scores, man.
Yeah, Brunson was averaging right around 17 and a half points and 8 assists a game. So it gives you an idea if you didn't have a Luka and Brunson had to be the starting point guard and kind of have the control of the game, what would he be? And you could say, well, hell, that 10-game stretch there, he was about 17, 18 points and about 7, 8 assists a game.
And so Freddie 2 years ago or a year and a half ago got 21 a year, and that was below market because I am pretty confident that the Knicks would have given him more than that if he had wanted to come here. He didn't want to come here. Can Jalen get 20 a year? I bet somebody will give him 20 a year, right? Yeah.
I mean, hey, I'm not a big fan of Tim Hardaway Jr. as in I like him as a person. He's a great streak shooter. He just got $20 million a year.
I mean, listen, we could talk about some of the players.
He's better than Tim Hardaway Jr. Brunson's better than Tim Hardaway Jr. by far.
I hope that's not a controversial. We love Timmy, but yeah. I hope that's not a controversial statement. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be really interesting. Obviously, the connection because Jalen's dad was Leon. I think it was his very first client, and so the family ties run deep. Also with Tom Thibodeau, Jalen's dad was assistant for Tom for many years. We'll see, but it's good to hear that he's playing well. So Frank, we may not get to see him. One other guy I have to ask you about. So I developed a soft spot last year for Theo Pinson. I know he hasn't been around for long with you guys. He just signed I think it was today. He signed a 2-way contract. We're recording this on Monday. Have you gotten any of the Theo flair yet from the bench stuff, like the dancing and any of that?
The other day when they played the Chicago Bulls and the Mavs played great basketball and beat them 113-99. People were on Twitter like, who's the dude in sweats that's acting like the head coach over there? And it's like, yeah, this is this new kid, Theo Pinson. Like he's a 10-day contract guy. They're talking about possibly signing him to a 2-way contract type of deal. And you would have thought he was the head coach of the team the way that he was on the sideline, like as they're on defense screaming and putting his hands up, like you got to do this. And we're like, damn, this kid's really into the game for just being in sweats and he didn't suit out. Like he couldn't play. And it was like, dude, this dude is into the game. Like this is game 7 of the NBA finals and stuff.
You know, there are people, including potentially someone you may be talking to literally right now, who would blame some of the Knicks' difficulties this season on the fact that that certain something, that special something, is not there anymore. And Pinson had a lot to do with that last year. You know, you might laugh, but he was a big part of our the bench enthusiasm and the culture and the whole thing. See, my daughter's still upset that he's gone. 2 more, and then I'm going to get you out of here because you're amazing with your time. First, about Dirk. You were in the building the other night when his jersey got risen to the rafters. The Mavs, of course, won that game in his honor. But I think you guys held the Warriors to like 80-something points, right?
The defensive efficiency right now, since Kidd had that speech on this isn't a team built for defense and stuff.
They're number one.
Yeah,
they're like one, right?
Yeah, they're top 3 since that speech.
Crazy. What was that like to be in the building? And if you want, just your thoughts on Dirk.
I almost I honestly, I would tell you, I got just a little bit lump in the throat just thinking about that moment again, because, and I don't know, for the New York Knicks fan, is Patrick Ewing, who's the greatest New York Knick of all time?
It's for me, it's Ewing. I think for most people, it's Ewing. I think even Clyde Frazier, who's the other contender for that spot, I think if you gave him truth serum, he'd probably even admit it. I mean, his numbers are so. I mean, go to literally any stat, he blows away. I was a quick aside. I was looking today because I was writing a little something about Marcus Camby. Marcus Camby is second all time in playoff blocks for the Knicks with 70. Ewing has 299. Playoff blocks. It's like, and there are 100. There's 100 stats like that. So it's Ewing. But the difference. I mean, obviously the difference. He didn't win a championship here. But there were also, and it's come up this week because of the Julius thing. There were also a couple of little testy moments here in New York. So for as much as Ewing holds a very special place in the hearts of Knicks fans, I don't know that it's on that level.
It's like. That makes Dirk so special is, yes, he was. So it wasn't like he was not drafted or like a late first round. So he was a lottery pick, but it was like, we were so pissed off here when it happened. We were like, cause we had Cherokee Parks, if you can remember him, or
I remember the drafts, the Paul Pierce, there was a play. Oh, the guy he got traded for, tractor trailer.
Yeah, tractor trailer. Luckily, that was a pre-done deal because I wasn't very happy about taking him either. But like, it was just like, how many white guys can we draft that like they all suck? Can we can we get this out? Like, you trade for Eric Montross, you draft Chris Anstey from Australia or wherever he was from. And it was just like, guys, let's stop doing this. And Dirk did not get off to a good start in his career. The strike shortened season, he wasn't very good. And then the first part of his second year, he wasn't very good. And then part of that second year, he starts playing better and better and better. And you're like, hey, we might have hit on something here. Mm-hmm. And so there was this growth of this person into not a good basketball player to a pretty good basketball player. He's changing the game. Like, we have the 7-footer out there that when you're watching TNT, they're like, what the hell is this kid doing? Like, is like, no, he is a 7-foot shooting guard. You know, I don't care that he has the height of a center, 7-foot shooting guard, and allowed him to do that and become that player that he became. And it was just this beautiful relationship and this growth from the worst franchise of the decade in the 90s to all of a sudden we're making the playoffs, we're winning in the playoffs. And he was our guy, and he was just so humble. You just couldn't believe how humble he was. And at one point when it wasn't working out in like 2008 and Kobe's pissed off in LA, Dirk goes to Mark Cuban and says, hey, I understand if you need to trade me to get Kobe, do it. Like, it'll, you know, and Mark Cuban's like, I'm not going to do that, Dirk. I'm going to try to trade for Kobe, but I'm going to. He's like, I understand Kobe's better. If you need to trade me to get him, you can do it. You know, type of deal. And Kobe was like, I'm only coming to Dallas to play with you. I'm not coming to Dallas to like send you to LA. But I mean, that was the type of person he was and is.
It's so funny you bring that up because not my first memory of Dirk, but in 2004 when it was Kobe and Shaq basically issued the ultimatum, like, one of us is not going to be here anymore because we can't stand playing with each other. And it was obviously Shaq who was going to get traded. I remember that summer there was like, well, you could trade him to Dallas. And then the word was like, well, yeah, except Dallas isn't going to give up Dirk. And I was a Shaq guy. I loved Shaq. To me, Shaq was like the epitome of everything. And I'm like, what are they crazy? They're not going to trade this kid to get it's Shaq. I mean, it's Shaq. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute, hold on. No, they're not crazy. This kid is that good. And that's when it hit me like, wow, this guy's going to want to be one of the all-time greats. And obviously, you know, he is. He's the greatest I'm 44 years old. And for most people that are around my age, somewhere between like late 30s and let's say 50 years old, as much as the Cowboys had the dynasty with Aikman and Emmett and Irvin, like, he's our guy. That's awesome. If you care about all sports, let's just say you care about all sports. Some people just care about football, but like, if you care about baseball, basketball, hockey, football, Dirk is it for us. You know, I didn't grow up with Roger Staubach. I mean, he's an unbelievable person, and in his own right, for people that are my dad's age, it's Roger, right? But for us here in Dallas, he played 21 years here. He never asked out. You know, yes, he at times was frustrated with losing, but I mean, he was like, this is my team. It's old school, right? This doesn't happen anymore, especially in the NBA. He's like, Steph,
I'm try to figure out a way to bring our team to the top. And I'm not going to leave because it's not going well. I'll try to figure out a way how to make it better.
But not only did he do it, he did it in a way that I think it doesn't matter what team you root for. Everybody loves that 2010-11 Dallas Mavericks team, yeah. You know, and I have to say it's not only because of how they did it, but it's because of who they beat. And they did it the quote unquote right way. And
Dirk won't say it publicly, but he said it enough privately that people like Caron Butler, Brendan Hayward, or Jason Terry, JJ Barea, a lot of guys from that team would say he really wanted to beat the Heat because he, first of all, lost in 2006 and didn't like Dwayne Wade. And then second of all, he did not like it's not going right for me in my city, so I'm going to team up with two other guys to make it easy. He truly kind of, I don't know why, maybe it's because he's from Germany, not from the United States, but he didn't have that AAU mentality. He didn't have that, let's just go make an all-star team somewhere and win it all. He felt like the way Larry Bird felt about the Celtics, or Patrick felt about the Knicks, or Magic felt about the Lakers, or Jordan about Chicago. Like, this is my team and I'm going to figure it out. And it just, for us, you can't ask for anything more than the 100% commitment, because I might be fans of other players and I might kind of root for the Knicks, but the Mavericks are my team. That's my do or die team. The Knicks are your do or die team. And somehow this person from Germany came to Dallas and said, this is my do or die team.
Yeah. It's amazing that you got that. Last thing before I let you go, just about this year's team. I think I said it. Andrew, can I tap you in here for half a second? Did I say on our Patreon pod that I had the Mavs as a dark horse finals contender at some point in the last few episodes?
Yeah. Okay. You also, I think, before the season predicted either a 3 or a 4 seed that they could get up to as high as that. Yeah.
So I'm high on this team. Do you think that there is a world where this team can, I'll just leave it a little bit more general, make some noise in the playoffs?
Before Christmas, I would have said you're full of crap, Jonathan. This is not a good team. I don't even know if they'll make a top 6 spot. They'll probably be in the play-in situation, maybe get out of that, then get hammered by Golden State or Phoenix. But right now, I am optimistic as we sit here today. That being said, if they're going to make any noise in the playoffs, Luka's going to have to mature. He's a top 5 player in the league. You can't argue top 10. You can argue top 5, but you can't argue he's a top 10 player in the league. So we have that piece that you need, the superstar to lead you. But he still is only 22. And I'm reminded by like Magic Johnson when they did kind of the Lakers Celtics documentary, and you listen to him, and they didn't go to Magic. As great as Magic Johnson was, he won a championship his rookie year, filling in for Kareem at center. Pat Riley went to him in 1986 after they had lost to the Rockets. That's 7 years into his career, and said, Magic, I need you to be the leader of this team and take more responsibility. Now, that's one of the greatest players in basketball history that they didn't ask till 26, 27, 28 years old to then, you got to take charge. And he's like, have you talked to Kareem about this? And so I have to remember that he's only 22. And even people like Magic Johnson and recently LeBron, and I know how great LeBron was, and took his team to a finals before it was probably ready to even compete there. He still was immature, and he still struggled with maturity. And Luka's doing the same. Luka has to mature at a stage that most people don't want to mature at. Porzingis has to become a healthy basketball player. That's a lot to ask. And then these role players who right now, Maxi Kleber and Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock and Josh Green, are playing an unbelievable role. They are doing their job to perfection as the role players. They all have to stay at that level. Yeah. Can they all do that? Tim Hardaway Jr., I didn't mention him because he really has not had a good year. He's been horrible. But I know what he can be. He can be a great streaky shooter and get hot.
He'll win you a game or two, and then he'll lose you. Hopefully not too many games.
Can all those guys play up to those expectations and those roles? If they can, Jonathan, you're going to look like a genius, and this team can be super dangerous. But it's a lot of things that have to go right for them to knock off. I would say Golden State and Phoenix, to me, are by far the favorites in the West. Utah's always winning a lot of regular season games and losing.
I was about to say, don't have Utah in that conversation. Interesting. Okay.
Here's why, Jonathan. I collect cards, and I bought too much Donovan Mitchell last year, thinking that Utah was going to make the NBA Finals, and then they lost to the Clippers without Kawhi. Like, that didn't make any sense to me. So I've to me, they're on a prove it. I've written them off as they're going to win 55 games and they're going to lose in the first or second round. Until they prove different, that's who they are to me. Memphis is interesting. I don't think they're ready to win playoff series, but they're an up-and-coming team.
Yeah.
And then I can't write off the Lakers because LeBron is still great. Anthony Davis is he's better than Porzingis, but he has that Porzingis problem of showing up and being healthy.
Not having a great year.
The Lakers scare me because Anthony Davis and LeBron have already won a title together, and they still, when they are together, are very good. So that's a lot. They got to knock off one of those teams, and then you knock off, let's just say, you knock off Utah, then you'd have to knock off Golden State or Phoenix. That's a lot to ask.
I think if they can get at least to the 4-5, and then you don't have to play all three of those teams potentially, you know what I mean? Yeah. So if you're the 4 or the 5, you get, hopefully you could get past the first round.
Yeah. You get Memphis, right? A young team without experience.
Yeah. And I don't want to disrespect Memphis, but Ja Morant is freaking incredible. But I'll give that series to Dallas, and then you take your shot against. Maybe you'll get your wish, and they'll play Utah, and that'll be. I can see Utah getting the 1 seed. In which case,
I still want payback. I love Golden State Warriors, and Steph Curry had nothing to do with it. But if they got the 1 seed and Klay Thompson came back and they got James Wiseman and they're like, we're back, we're going to do it. And then we believe your ass and we knock you out the way you guys did in 2007 when it looked like we had a championship team. We lost the finals. You win 67 games. We're on our way to the championship. I love Curry. I love that organization. Hate what they did to us in 2007. But if we could knock them out when they think they're on top of the world and we're like, yeah, take that, we believe.
That would be a fun series as well. We'll see what happens. The next step for you guys is to just get there in one piece. The Knicks hopefully we'll get there ourselves. This was awesome, Mike. Before I let you go, can you just please remind the good folks at home where they can find you and your stuff?
Well, I'm on 105.3 The Fan. That's in Dallas, Fort Worth here, and you can check us out on the Odyssey app if you ever want to listen to. Right now, a lot of Dallas Cowboys talk is they're in the playoffs. Hopefully, when you see this, they're still in the playoffs. And obviously, we're the home of the Texas Rangers. I do Texas Rangers pre and post on Bally Sports Southwest if they have a season this year, which I'd like to get paid money. So hopefully they can come to an agreement at some point. With those greedy owners, I'm a former player, so it's all the owner's fault.
I agree. It's all the owner's fault.
And, that's about it. I like listening to you guys. And just remember, Knicks fans, you can always send us Julius Randle. Once you get, hey, that's a bunch of crap. You should get rid of them and send them back to Dallas. We'll give you, we'll give you Tim Hardaway Jr.
I was about to say, you're not parting off. We've had Timmy twice already. Third time is not the charm.
You guys can turn it around. Hopefully, I'm rooting for the Knicks. I like lefties. I like Julius. I like RJ Barrett. There's talent there. It's just it's not coming together, and they probably need to make a move. I don't know exactly what that move is. Honestly,
I don't know
I'd love to see you guys get Damian Lillard. I don't know how to pull that off, but that would be really fun because Damian can be the one, move Randle. Let's say you don't have to trade him in the move, and then Randle can be his too, and that would make more sense because as good as Randle is on the ball, he's not Damian Lillard. He's not Luka. He's not the premium guys with the balls in their hand. He needs the ball out of his hands more. He's not the guy that should be creating as much as he does in New York.
You sound like every Knicks fan who has watched this team this year. So you're in good company. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe maybe you never know. Maybe Dame's not the craziest thing in the world. One step at a time. We'll see what happens. This was awesome. Everybody out there, go follow Mike, listen to Mike, listen to his anything Mike's on.
And let's go Mets, man. Let's go Mets. You signed, you got Max, you got my guy Lindor. Let's go Mets.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Go Mets. And not for nothing, John, I don't know if you noticed this, but there's two teams that spent a ton of money this offseason before the strike happened. But it's the New York Mets and the Texas Rangers. You guys got what? Corey Seager and somebody else. I forget who.
Marcus Semien.
Yeah. So a guy that finished top 3 in MVP for the Blue Jays last year, hit 40 home runs. Arguably one of the best. So that's your middle infield now. Wow.
And we got Al Leiter's son, Jack, in the draft. So
you guys got Jack Leiter in the draft? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So hopefully, that'll be a year or two down the road, but hopefully Jack, in 2023 can start making noise here.
I believe you just said a Mets Rangers World Series.
I was about to say, you heard it here
back on,
first,
and we'll just talk all about it. There we go.
All right, fellas. That was fun.
Awesome stuff, Mike. Thanks so much.